Hi, welcome back. Today's anime is about 5 perverted boys who entered a previous all-girls school. The problem is, they cannot control their horny. As punishment, they became prisoners in their school. Well, please enjoy this video.
5 guys, namely Kiyoshi, Gakuto, Shingo, Joe, and Andre, managed to pass the entrance exam for an esteemed academy that used to be an all-girls school. The male-to-female ratio is a staggering 1 to 200. With a new chairman taking charge, the school implemented new policies. Disappointed on their first day, they found themselves unable to engage in conversations with any girls. Kiyoshi made an effort to approach the girls but faced rejection and avoidance. In Kiyoshi's classroom, where he was the lone male student, he accidentally dropped his eraser, adorned with a sumo wrestler design, a gift from his mother. Chiyo, the most gorgeous girl in Kiyoshi's class, noticed and became saddened, assuming that Chiyo held negative views of him due to his peculiar eraser. To his surprise, Chiyo also had an affinity for sumo and possessed a similar eraser. Consequently, Kiyoshi claimed to share a passion for sumo, despite it not being true.
相撲大好きです
While the remaining 4 guys waited for Kiyoshi, they thought it was impossible for him to have a conversation with a girl and speculated that he might just be hiding in the restroom. Little did they know that Kiyoshi had become successful and was now chatting with Chiyo. Chiyo invited Kiyoshi to watch a sumo match together. Without hesitation, Kiyoshi readily agreed. He was overjoyed with his newfound luck. After classes in their dorm, the 5 friends decided to spy on the girls' restroom because they wanted to catch a glimpse of naked girls. They collaborated and embarked on their mission to sneak a peek at the girls. According to Gakuto, class 1-1 has the most cute girls. Kiyoshi realized that his class was indeed class 1-1, and Chiyo was there, but he didn't want his friends to see Chiyo's body. Unfortunately, he couldn't stop his companions because they were already excited and salivating. While they were on the rooftop near the window of the girls' changing room, Gakuto came up with the idea of using his smartphone connected to another smartphone to peep. However, Kiyoshi still hesitated because he didn't want his friends to see Chiyo's body. When Kiyoshi saw Chiyo walking in the hallway and realized she wasn't in the restroom, he felt relieved and decided to help his friends. Unbeknownst to Kiyoshi, it was his own smartphone that Gakuto was dangling out the window. Suddenly, the smartphone fell into a plant pot, and Kiyoshi had to retrieve it. Just as he retrieved it, Chiyo entered the changing room. Kiyoshi couldn't help but cry, thinking that Chiyo had caught him, and he would be expelled from the school and labeled a pervert. Kiyoshi's friends slowly started escaping from the rooftop. When Chiyo saw Kiyoshi, she called him Mayumi, as her vision was blurry, and she mistook him for her female friend. Chiyo invited Mayumi to take a bath and enter the girls' bathhouse. The boys were ecstatic, considering themselves in heaven. The other 4 boys refused to let Kiyoshi enter the bathhouse alone, so they decided that they would all go together and accompany Kiyoshi. While Kiyoshi was taking a shower, Chiyo engaged him in a conversation about the underground student council. Suddenly, the real Mayumi, Chiyo's friend, arrived, leaving Chiyo puzzled about who accompanied her inside the bathroom. On the rooftop, the remaining 4 guys were suddenly swarmed by a bunch of crows, and out of nowhere, 2 unknown girls showed up. The girls told the girls in the bathhouse that the boys were peeking and invited them to come out. The underground student council tied up the 4 guys on the school grounds. The council vice president asked Gakuto about their missing friend, but Gakuto denied exposing Kiyoshi and claimed that it was only the 4 of them who tried to peep. Kiyoshi, who was hiding, got caught by the president of the underground student council. The next day, the underground student council dropped the bombshell that the guys would either be locked up for a whole month or face expulsion. They also warned that any escape attempts would only make their sentence longer. So, the 5 guys had no choice but to comply with the underground student council and become prisoners. They were given chores like cleaning and carpentry. They also had to live in the prison and attend classes using a huge TV. While Kiyoshi was working, he caught Chiyo looking at him. On the flip side, while they were working, they also had to endure the vice president of the student council's abuse whenever they didn't follow orders. The vice president ordered Andre to lick his shoes. But Kiyoshi stopped him and told the vice president that he had gone too far. The vice president backed off and let them finish their work for the day. Afterward, while they were eating in their prison cell, the other 4 guys got mad at Kiyoshi for intervening and preventing the vice president's abuse. It turned out they actually enjoyed being mistreated, and Andre even mentioned wanting to lick the vice president's shoes.
会長の靴が舐められなくてなぜ止めたんだい。もう少しわかるぞアンドレ。俺も舐めたかった。下に期待でござる。
The president of the underground student council noticed this, so she decided to send Hannah. Hannah instructed them to find 4-leaf clovers for underprivileged children. At first, they thought Hannah would be nicer and kinder than the vice president, but it turned out she was even more violent. She wore jogging pants under her skirt, unlike the vice president, whom they could peep at. Hannah was also a karate champion. When Hannah noticed that the 5 guys weren't taking their task seriously and were just watching the girls training, she immediately beat them up. While Kiyoshi was searching for a 4-leaf clover in a different location, he found a baby crow that had fallen from its nest. He climbed the tree and returned the baby crow to its nest, but he didn't realize that Chio was watching. According to Chio, there's no bad person who loves sumo, so she didn't believe that Kiyoshi was one of the guys peeping. She invited Kiyoshi to watch sumo again, and he agreed, even though he knew it was impossible for him to go because he was still a prisoner. Suddenly, Hannah arrived. At first, Kiyoshi thought she was looking for him, but it turned out she needed to relieve herself, so she went under the tree. Hannah urinated under the tree that Kiyoshi had climbed. Then, the mother crow arrived and Kiyoshi ended up falling from the tree. He witnessed the full view of Hannah's act of peeing. Hannah screamed and cried out of embarrassment. The 5 guys were sent back to their prison cell by the vice president. In the cell, they were overjoyed because Kiyoshi made the violent Hannah cry. Afterward, the school chairman talked to the president of the student council and told her that the underground student council was being too strict with the guys and that they should be given weekends off from work as a vacation. The president told the guys that if they performed well in their work, they would be given 3 hours of free time on Saturdays and Sundays. The 5 guys became excited and did their best in their tasks to earn the freedom on weekends. Hannah arrived and informed the president that their new guidebook had arrived. The president brought the new guidebook to the chairman's office, but she noticed that a sexual website was open on the chairman's computer. The president got annoyed upon seeing it and vented her frustration on the 5 guys when she saw them resting. She told them that they no longer had the 3-hour free time on weekends. Kiyoshi cried because of this as he realized he wouldn't be able to go on a date with Chio. So he decided to escape from the prison cell. He started digging a hole slowly to get out of the school. Chio signaled him and reminded him about their sumo wrestling date. After that, Kiyoshi received some weird signals from Gakudo, indicating that he knew about Kiyoshi's plan to escape. As Kiyoshi continued digging, Hannah approached him again. Hannah accused Kiyoshi of spreading rumors about seeing her urinate and being laughed at by the guys. Kiyoshi denied it and insisted that he didn't do such a thing. Hannah didn't believe him, so she told Kiyoshi that he should urinate in front of her as proof that he didn't spread the rumor. Hannah stood in front of Kiyoshi, waiting for him to urinate. However, Gakudo suddenly called out to Kiyoshi, interrupting the situation. Kiyoshi and Gakudo had a conversation, and it was during this conversation that Gakudo confessed his intention to help Kiyoshi escape. Kiyoshi was surprised because he thought Gakudo was going to report him. According to Gakudo, he would assist Kiyoshi in escaping on Saturday so that he could watch the sumo match with Chio. After that, Gakudo wanted Kiyoshi to buy him a limited edition 3 Kingdoms action figure. That evening, the president of the underground student council and the school chairman crossed paths while the president was on patrol. Suddenly, the chairman dropped the documents he was holding, which turned out to be pictures of women's butts. The president stepped on them and declared that she would be even harsher in her treatment of the prisoners starting the next day. Kiyoshi and Gakudo began planning their escape. The following day, they started executing their plan. They pretended to have a heated argument near the hut where they were digging the hole. As a result, Hannah attacked them, causing the hut to collapse. With the hut destroyed, the vice president joined in and reprimanded them, instructing both Kiyoshi and Gakudo to fix the damaged hut. Although they pretended to be upset, deep down, they were actually thrilled because they would be working near the hole and could continue digging more effectively. However, their hopes were crushed when Hannah suddenly started keeping a close eye on them. Hannah called out to Kiyoshi and said she still wanted to see him pee, so she called him over and gave him tea to make him pee quickly. Gakudo tried to get rid of Hannah, but he failed. Gakuto noticed that Kiyoshi seemed like he needed to pee, so he thought it was a good chance to chase Hana away. However, he didn't know that Kiyoshi was avoiding peeing because he didn't want Hana to see. Gakuto claimed that Kiyoshi had to pee. As expected, Hana went with him to the restroom. Kiyoshi suddenly ran towards the restroom, but Hana caught up with him. Hana insisted that Kiyoshi pee in front of her, but things took an unexpected turn, and Kiyoshi accidentally peed on Hana. Hana was deeply traumatized by the incident. As a result, the vice president decided to give Hana some time off to rest. Gakuto was overjoyed by this because it meant their plan could move forward. He asked Kiyoshi what he did, but Kiyoshi remained silent. After Kiyoshi successfully distracted Hana, she stopped guarding the boys for a while. Leaving the task to the vice president. She rarely passed by the hole they were digging. Kiyoshi and Gakuto planned to conduct a test run of their plan for 1 hour. Kiyoshi would exit through the hole they dug for 1 hour. Meanwhile, the school chairman was disappointed in himself when his daughter Mari, the president of the underground student council, discovered his collection of butt pictures. As Kiyoshi attempted to exit through the hole, he saw the school chairman digging the ground. He was burying the butt pictures one by one, mentioning the names of the women and the dates they were photographed. On the other hand, the vice president was searching for Kiyoshi with Gakuto, so Kiyoshi needed to return. However, he couldn't go back immediately because the school chairman was still there burying the pictures. Kiyoshi rushed back to the hole but got stuck, and the vice president was getting closer. Luckily, Gakuto had prepared a trap and managed to reach Kiyoshi before the vice president discovered their exit hole. Afterwards, Gakuto and Kiyoshi discussed about Shingo, suspecting that he might be onto their plan. However, when Shingo passed by them, he misheard their conversation and only caught snippets about butts. As a result, Shingo grew suspicious, thinking that Gakuto and Kiyoshi might be gay and always together because of it.
Why are you gay?
Later, while Shingo was preparing to take a shower, he noticed something strange. Upon entering the bathroom, he saw Kiyoshi and Gakuto seemingly engaging in some bizarre activity. Gakuto was kneeling down and picking up a dropped soap. Shingo couldn't believe what he was seeing and wondered if his eyes were playing tricks on him. Gakuto slipped again and ended up in an awkward position, but Kiyoshi helped him back up. Coincidentally, Shingo caught a glimpse of this scene, solidifying his belief that Kiyoshi and Gakuto were engaged in a sword fight.
You are gay.
Thinking that he had caught them in the act, Shingo believed that they were planning something against him. As a result, Shingo ran away from the two of them. Following this incident, Kiyoshi and Gakuto resumed their escape planning. Kiyoshi found a way to cross from the bathroom to the hole they had dug without being seen by using the drainage channels surrounding their school. As Kiyoshi crawled through the ducts, he overheard other inmates conversing. It turns out that Shingo had been spreading the news about what he saw in the bathroom, claiming that even though Kiyoshi and Gakuto had a relationship, he still considered them close friends. Furthermore, as Kiyoshi continued crawling through the ducts, he caught a glimpse of the vice president squatting, and he couldn't help but stare at her from below. However, Kiyoshi decided to return to Gakuto to avoid arousing suspicion from others about his absence. As he crawled back, the vice president's heels accidentally slipped into the hole and hit Kiyoshi's butthole. Afterwards, the vice president lined them up, indicating that their work was finished. She asked Kiyoshi why he took so long in the bathroom that day. Kiyoshi was about to nervously respond, but Shingo suddenly defended him and showed the blood on Kiyoshi's buttocks, claiming that Kiyoshi had hemorrhoids. On the other hand, the three other inmates confirmed that Kiyoshi and Gakuto were indeed engaged in a sword fight, with the blood on Kiyoshi's buttocks serving as strong evidence.
You are gay.
Following this, because there were no computers in their prison, they had to use computers together with the girls in their computer class. Since they had access to the computers, Gakuto made it his mission to download poop.mp3, a sound effect of someone defecating, as their backup plan in case Kiyoshi couldn't return immediately. However, their search on the internet yielded no results for poop.mp3. Therefore, they had to record the natural sound of flatulence themselves. However, because Kiyoshi needed to go on a date with Chio, if he were the one to create the poop sound, Chio might be turned off and refuse to go on the date. Therefore, Gakuto had no choice but to be the one to produce the sound for them to record and use on the day of their escape. But because of this, Gakudo believed that he would never have a girlfriend and would be labeled as poop. However, for Gakudo, his action figure was more important, so he was willing to sacrifice for the sake of his action figure. And because of Gakudo's sacrifice, Kiyoshi vowed that after his date, he would buy Gakudo's action figure. Afterwards, the chairman of the school was shown in his office, seemingly digging up the pictures of women's buttocks again, telling himself that he had a weak heart but needed to be strong as a father, chairman, and man. Thus, he decided to bury them once again, this time using cement. Following that, Gakudo and Kiyoshi made a vow to make their escape plan successful and not let Gakudo's sacrifice go to waste. After the chairman cemented his dug-up hole, he noticed the hole that Kiyoshi and Gakudo had worked hard to dig. When Kiyoshi checked the hole, he found it covered with cement. It turns out the chairman of the school had cemented it. Next, while they were having dinner, Gakudo became emotional because Kiyoshi didn't check if the cement was fresh and soft enough to be dug again. Gakudo was extremely disappointed because not only did he lose his chance to get his action figure, but he also wouldn't have a girlfriend. While Gakudo and Kiyoshi were arguing, the other prisoners supported them, thinking they were just having a lover's quarrel. Kiyoshi and Gakudo couldn't reveal their escape plan to their fellow inmates because it would implicate them as well. That night, Kiyoshi heard Gakudo crying, so he started thinking of another plan. Kiyoshi told Gakudo that his plan was to disguise himself as a girl and walk out through the front gate. He would need to borrow a female uniform when the laundry service arrived, so he asked Gakudo for help once again. Afterwards, Gakudo attempted to provoke the vice president and the president of the underground student council. In the end, he stripped the president of her skirt. The vice president got angry and decided to shave Gakudo's hair. When his fellow inmates saw him, Gakudo was completely bald, and he gave his shaved hair to Kiyoshi. It turns out that Gakudo's plan was to misbehave in order to have his hair shaved off and give it to Kiyoshi as a wig. It would be suspicious for him to pretend to be a girl with male-looking hair. Because of Gakudo's sacrifice, Kiyoshi once again promised that their escape would be successful and that he would buy Gakudo's action figure. Their next mission was to secure a female uniform from the laundry service. Kiyoshi couldn't find the right timing to sneak away, so Gakudo started shouting and tried to insult the bald laundry worker to create a distraction and give Kiyoshi a chance to get the uniform. Kiyoshi successfully obtained the uniform but almost got trapped in the departing truck. Fortunately, he managed to escape. Afterward, the president of the underground student council instructed the vice president to be stricter with the inmates due to their increasing rebellious behavior. The president warned the vice president that if the inmates continued to cause trouble, she would personally punish the vice president. Finally, the day of Kiyoshi's escape, which he and Gakudo had worked hard for, arrived. Both Chiyo and Gakudo were excited for this day. Chiyo was looking forward to watching a sumo match, while Gakudo anticipated finally holding his action figure. They began executing their plan. Kiyoshi went to the bathroom, leaving a speaker in the toilet, and crawled through the canal towards the exit. He changed into the girl's uniform and put on his wig. While he was changing, he almost got caught by the vice president, but luckily she left quickly. Kiyoshi successfully made his way out of the school. However, before he could completely leave, he nearly got caught by the president of the student council. Fortunately, she let him go when she saw that his jacket was damaged. Kiyoshi spotted Chiyo and she gave him a handkerchief. It seemed like their sumo date was finally happening. While they were watching the sumo match, Chiyo asked Kiyoshi if he had already had lunch. Even though Kiyoshi had already eaten, he lied and said he hadn't eaten yet and that he was very hungry. Chiyo then made rice balls for him. Kiyoshi was delighted and excited to see what filling Chiyo had prepared for the rice balls. But to his disappointment, he realized that it had no filling. It turned out Chiyo only used salt to give it some flavor. On the other hand, the vice president began to suspect the prolonged absence of Kiyoshi. She decided to check what he was doing in the bathroom. This made Gakudo nervous, and as the vice president approached the bathroom, Gakudo played their poop.mp3 sound. Gakudo was delighted that it worked, buying them more time. Meanwhile, as Kiyoshi was happily on his date, he suddenly felt a stomachache and excused himself to go to the restroom. In the meantime, Chio accidentally spilled her drink in Kiyoshi's bag, and when she wiped it, she discovered a female uniform inside his bag. When Kiyoshi returned to Chio, she exclaimed, "You're disgusting," and walked out. Kiyoshi was puzzled by Chio's sudden change in attitude upon noticing his wet bag. He realized that the uniform he borrowed actually belonged to Chio. Feeling sad, Kiyoshi headed back to their school. On the other hand, even Shingo wondered where Kiyoshi was, as he had been in the restroom for almost 2 hours. Shingo decided to go to the restroom, but Gakuto tried to stop him when they were spotted by the vice president, who kicked both of them. While the chairman of the school and the president of the underground student council were having a conversation, they both received a text message simultaneously. Gakuto attempted to play their poop.mp3, but it didn't work. When the vice president kicked the restroom door, Gakuto was surprised to see that Kiyoshi had arrived on time. They saw Kiyoshi crying. When Gakuto asked why Kiyoshi was crying, he couldn't speak. Gakuto thought that perhaps Kiyoshi hadn't been able to buy his action figure. However, Kiyoshi revealed that he had indeed bought the action figure and something had happened during his sumo date, which was why he was crying. After coming out of the restroom, Kiyoshi was confronted by the president of the underground student council. It turned out that Chio-chan had posted about their sumo date, and that's how the president found out. Kiyoshi was exposed, and the contents of his bag were seen as well. Shingo punched him, and the other prisoners also got angry because Kiyoshi's actions would extend their imprisonment for another month, all for the sake of a girl. Following this, the president and vice president interrogated Kiyoshi about what had happened. Meanwhile, Chio-chan was sulking in her room after the incident. In the end, Kiyoshi took all the blame and didn't involve Gakuto. He was sentenced to expulsion from their school, while the remaining prisoners had their punishment extended by another month. The other prisoners were angry at Kiyoshi for not informing them about his escape plan. They felt that he didn't trust them and didn't consider them true friends. On the other hand, Chio-chan seemed willing to forgive Kiyoshi and believed that he might have had a good reason for taking her uniform. Following the events, the underground student council tried to force Kiyoshi to sign a voluntary dropout form. According to the student council president, if he stayed in school, he would be labeled as a pervert by other students. So, it would be better for him to transfer to a different school where nobody knew him. However, before he could sign the form, Chio-chan intervened and defended him. Kiyoshi also explained that it just so happened that Chio's uniform was the one he ended up taking, and he didn't do it intentionally. Chio told her older sister that there are no inherently bad people, just like how there are no inherently bad crows. She witnessed Kiyoshi saving a baby crow that had fallen from a tree. Because of this incident, Kiyoshi gained courage and refused to sign the voluntary dropout form. Chio also told the president that if she forced Kiyoshi to drop out, she would drop out as well, alongside him. While returning to the prison, Kiyoshi reminisced about Chio-chan's oppai, and now that everything was clear with Chio-chan, he had no reason to drop out of school. Upon Kiyoshi's return to the prison, the other inmates treated him poorly, except for Gakuto. They ate his dinner, causing him to go hungry that night. Next, the president and vice president of the underground student council discussed a plan called Operation DTO, which aimed to remove the boys from the school. The bullying from the other inmates, led by Shingo, continued, and they intentionally avoided Kiyoshi. Despite Gakuto's reluctance, he joined the other inmates to avoid raising suspicion that he and Kiyoshi were allies. Kiyoshi drew strength from thinking about Chio-chan's oppai. While Kiyoshi was about to clean the restroom, he encountered Hana. Hana confronted him about his avoidance, questioning if he found her dirty. Kiyoshi answered politely that he didn't see her as dirty, causing Hana to stop bothering him. Afterwards, the 3 members of the underground student council discussed their plan to expel all the boys from their school, Operation DTO. Hana had also returned to their group. Following this, after the prisoners finished their work, the vice president summoned Shingo. She provocatively ate cake in front of Shingo and even fed him some cake. Then, the vice president announced that she had a task for Shingo. Due to the prolonged sentence of the prisoners, they became irritable with one another, easily losing their temper and getting into fights. Shingo continued to provide information about his fellow prisoners to the vice president while being treated to delicious food. Meanwhile, the underground student council carried on with Operation DTO, utilizing the information they obtained from Shingo against the prisoners. Just like Joe's obsession with ants and Andre's desire to be beaten up by the vice president, they use these personal vulnerabilities to stress the prisoners and quickly provoke their anger. Shingo also continued to bully Kiyoshi, excluding him from the other prisoners. While Kiyoshi was sitting alone, he noticed the vice president and Shingo having a conversation. It turned out that the vice president had instructed Shingo to distract Joe away from his aunts. The underground student council began implementing their plan, with Joe's aunts at the center of it. Shingo lured Joe away from his ant farm, claiming that he had something important to tell him, even though it was just a pointless question. Suddenly, Joe saw one of the president's crows attacking his ant farm. When Joe approached, he was blocked by the vice president, who told him that the crow belonged to the president and he couldn't get near it. Because Joe was worried about his aunts and the vice president refused to move, Joe forcefully pushed her aside and ran towards his aunts. However, he was kicked hard by Hannah. Upon seeing the situation of his aunts, Joe became even angrier at the president and attempted to stab her with a wooden stick, but Kiyoshi stopped him. Unfortunately, Kiyoshi ended up getting stabbed in the asshole. Kiyoshi denied being stabbed by Joe to prevent further punishment and claimed that he accidentally sat on the stick that pierced his asshole. They imprisoned Joe. According to Joe, everything started with the president's crows killing his aunts. However, the president argued that her crows were bathing in the ants' secretions to use them as insecticides, and not a single ant was killed by her crows. As Joe realized, the incident might have been due to his lack of knowledge about it. But little did he know that it was a setup orchestrated by the Underground Student Council and their Operation DTO. Hannah, on the other hand, offered to take Kiyoshi to the clinic despite his reluctance. Since there was no nurse available, Hannah took it upon herself to treat his wound and apply some ointment. Hannah entered Kiyoshi's location carrying a bottle for him to urinate in. She insisted that he urinate and even threatened to take a picture of him doing so. However, Kiyoshi refused to comply. Frustrated by Kiyoshi's refusal, Hannah decided to urinate on him while he was lying face down on the bed. Suddenly, Chio-chan walked in. The two quickly hid underneath the bed. Hannah started feeling something hard poking her and gradually getting bigger. Once Chio-chan left the room, Kiyoshi apologized to Hannah. However, this caused Hannah to faint. Next, the president of the Underground Student Council paid a visit to the school chairman to report on the incidents involving the male prisoners. However, the president quickly left the office upon seeing the mouse pad that resembled the chairman's large buttocks. Now, let's shift our focus back to the prisoners. Joe and Kiyoshi reconciled after Kiyoshi saved Joe from being stabbed by the president, which could have landed him in actual prison if not for Kiyoshi's intervention. Joe also admonished Shingo to stop bullying Kiyoshi. Following that, the vice president called Shingo again. Shingo was given back his old school uniform and was given a 2-hour break outside the school to relax.
And that is all for our anime recap for today. What do you think about today's anime? Yamami thinks that Prison School is plenty hilarious. I mean, it's borderline hentai, but the overall plotline combined with ecchi scenes was beautifully executed. Not to mention the jokes are comedy gold. Yamami will put this in S of Yamami's personal tier list. Well, that is all for today. See you again next time. Bye bye!